Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am so excited to have you all here and welcome you back for day 2 of the MVJ 2021 convention. We've already got a whole bunch of participants. I see we have a lot of people who are in our mentorship program, a lot of guests from all different corners of the world here. And thank you for tuning in so early. And let me please welcome Mary Nahorniak. She's calling in all the way from California, so it's very early for her, and we really appreciate her taking the time to share these wonderful tools that Google has for journalists. A lot of great free tools that you can use, and today is going to be a really informative session, and I think it's going to be excellent for your reporting. So, with no further ado, Mary, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. I saw someone in Europe in the chat. I'm just going to get my screen share started. I'm excited to be here with you all today. I'll introduce myself and the material in just a moment. I want to just note, I just mentioned the chat. So if you have questions as we go along, that's the best place for them. And I'll do my best to monitor it sort of in real time and not move too far beyond something if you have a question on it. But feel free to ask. The very first thing I want to share with you is a cheat sheet that I have for you. So I'm pasting a Google Doc into the chat right now, and that has URLs of everything I'm going to go over today. I'm going to share a lot of information and resources with you, and know that you don't have to take screenshots, you don't have to take notes. It's all there for you in the cheat sheet, but you are also welcome to take your own notes, of course, and follow along whatever way is best for you. So without further ado, our focus today is on new tools for journalists. I'm going to actually start with our advanced search training. For those of you that haven't had it yet, I think it's really informative, and there's some things you can put in your pocket to start to use right away. And then I'm going to show you some of our newer tools, including Pinpoint, which is used specifically to help analyze documents and transcribe audio, as well as Google Earth time-lapse, which shows change across our globe over the last 4 decades, any point on the globe. So some cool stuff. Thematically pulled together under new tools. So as mentioned, I'm Mary Nahorniak. I'm the US Teaching Fellow for Google News Lab. I've been in this role for about 6 months. My pronouns are she and her. Before I started this job, I was at USA Today leading the audience team. I was there for about a decade. I've also been an editor at the Baltimore Sun, the Richmond Times-Dispatch. I've worked for a news literacy nonprofit and worked in Malaysia for a year for a mobile internet company. And I want to just also note that I'm an Air Force kid. I have a sister, father, uncle, cousin, and my grandfather, all of whom were Air Force veterans. So I love the mission and the work that you all have done. Thank you for your service. And I'm happy to be a resource on Google or on anything else going forward. So I hope you will connect with me and that we can stay connected on journalism topics. So my information is here on the screen. As mentioned, I work for Google News Lab, which is part of the Google News Initiative. The GNI is Google's effort to build a stronger future for journalism. My role focuses on the first of the 3 E's here, to elevate and strengthen quality journalism. The other areas of focus for the GNI are on evolving business models through programs like Subscribe with Google, and empowering news organizations through innovation. That's mainly achieved through our regional innovation challenges, as well as our development of tools for journalists like Pinpoint that I just mentioned, and which we'll go over today. The first URL to share with you is our training website, g.co/news training. This one deserves a special call out because everything I go over today has its own training on this page. So most people are experiential learners. We learn by doing, and I'm grateful that you're here to learn also by listening. But most of these things are going to make a lot more sense when you get a chance to use them yourself. And I hope that you will, because it will all start to make a lot more sense once you start doing it. So you can follow the trainings, or you can simply just use the tools. As Russell mentioned, everything is free. I'm also happy to do trainings for your own newsroom, so you're welcome to reach out to me about that as well. All the tools are free, all of the training is free. This is Google's effort to connect and support with journalists. So for today, we have a packed agenda. I'm probably going to use every minute of this hour. As mentioned, I'm going to do our advanced search training, which will give you both some search modifiers, as well as some specialized search engines that do very specific things. We're going to go over Pinpoint, that new tool that I think is really powerful, and I hope you agree and will like it. And then Google Earth time-lapse. And at the very end, we'll use one collaboration tool connected to time-lapse to keep it interactive and bring it all together. So that said, let's dive right into advanced search. So everybody here is a prolific searcher. We're searching for things all day long. We're probably doing it without even thinking about it. Google's founder, Sergey and Larry, said the perfect search engine should understand exactly what you mean and give you back exactly what you want. Sounds great, not always how it works. That's always the goal of search engineers. So until it works this way for you, we have search modifiers, also known as search refinements. And we're going to go over 6 today that are of specific use to journalists. There are 42 or 43 search modifiers. In your cheat sheet, I've linked to a blog post that goes over all of them. And so you might, if you're curious to learn more about those, just know that you have that resource as well. So I'm going to go over each of these. Some you may already know about, have been using or used in other ways. A lot of them are Boolean terms, but I'm going to walk through some use cases specifically for the work that we do. So the first one is to simply remove a piece of information. You can remove a word, a phrase by putting it in quotes, multiple words and phrases from your search results. So when we think about things like search refinements, I think it's important to think about that word refinement, because what we're doing is, while we're narrowing our set of results, we also should be making them more useful, right? And sometimes we know I'm not going to want this word when we walk up to our search. And sometimes we don't know that until we start to look at the results and we go, oh, filter out this person with a similar name, right? Or something like that. So in this case, the classic use case is, if you want to know the speed of a Jaguar car, you remove the word cat. If you want to know the speed of the Jaguar cat, you remove the word car. My Canadian colleague told me about a town that I believe is in British Columbia called Dawson's Creek. They want to know information about their town. They need to Google that sort of thing, but they don't want any of their results about the WB show from the 2000s. So you can imagine that their search is minus and remove out a lot of sets of words: James Vanderbeek, WB, television, all kinds of things. So that, again, they're honing in, refining, and increasing the signal to noise ratio of their results. The next one is a site search, site : URL. All of these are set up where the URLs that I show you are like homepage URLs, but just know that you can use any of these for like an extended URL, for a story page, or anything else. But this is a way of using Google to search a site without using that site search, right? And many sites use Google search sort of baked into the site. Not all do. So sometimes I'll be searching for something and the results will be returned to me on site in a way that just doesn't match with my expectations. And I'll just move over to Google, do a site : whatever the URL is, and then search for my search term. You can put that search term at the front or at the back. A couple of other use cases that you might find helpful would be searching for site : facebook.com/groups, facebook.com/pages. You can search Twitter lists. So it's really difficult to search for things within Facebook and within Twitter. And so you can come over to Google and sort of do it from the side door and get more robust results. So keeping that in mind for looking for certain types of groups, looking for lists on certain types of people or accounts, you can do all of that sort of through this Google site search. So the way that this one is set up is we're searching the BBC site for news about Brexit, which is going to give you a very different set of results than simply just searching for the word Brexit. And this is similar, but a little bit different. So what this is doing is it's searching the TLD, the .com or whatever's at the end of the URL, the top level domain. And the way that this is set up is looking for information about the GDP on official.gov sites, which you can imagine is a different set of results than simply searching for GDP, where you're just going to get a lot of information about what is GDP, how are different countries ranked against one another. A couple of other examples that you might move this one forward would be looking on .mil sites, .edu, .orgs for official nonprofits. So again, you're limiting your results. You're saying, I only want this type of information from this kind of site, and you could do multiples as well. So you're just excluding a lot of the general web. And this is also kind of like the previous one, a good way of sort of getting underneath a site search or those first layer of general web results. So I think of this really as like honing in on what it is you're looking for. This one I love. I didn't know about this until I started in this role. So this is a related site search. So the way that this is set up is if you search Google for gettyimages.com, you're going to get gettyimages.com. But if you search for sites that are related to gettyimages.com, you're going to get a bunch more sites that are photography based. So if you're looking for stock photography or journalistic photography, you can do that. I also like this for reporting. If you think about your reporting on a company maybe, or a person with a URL, just running a related site search to simply see what the web is around that company or around that person. What does Google say is like this entity? And if you already know the results, great, you've done good reporting. And if there are some new things there, some rabbit holes to go down, you might find something interesting, someone interesting, or another company maybe to compare against who you're writing about. So just getting sort of what's around somebody or something by using a related site search can be a really helpful way of using that one. This one I think has some interesting implications. I'm going to walk you through a use case in just a moment, but this is a cache search. So cache : URL, and what it's going to do is it's going to take you back to the last cached version of that page. That cache could have come at any time. New sites tend to update very quickly, but more static sites like .gov sites, whitehouse.gov, other things, CDC, FDA, those don't get updated as frequently. They don't get maybe crawled as frequently. And so your last cache version of a page, and think specifically about using a story page URL here, is going to take you one step back into the past. So the example that I have for that is if we can remember all the way back to February 2020, which I know feels like 3 million years ago, but on the CDC webpage, on the right-hand side here at that time, so this is leap year, leap date, February 29th, 2020. I know this is tough to see, but there was a table of COVID data from the federal government. So total number of positive cases, number of tests given. If you were a health reporter at that time, you probably had this page bookmarked on this emerging disease that we now know a whole lot more about. And yet 3 days later, on March 3rd, 2020, on the left here, that table was gone. So the case data and the testing data had disappeared. So if you're that health reporter at that time, fear strikes in the heart. Where did this information go? How do I stay up to date on testing and positive case information? And this COVID thing seems to be becoming a bigger deal by the hour. And so you could use the cache : search to simply go back in time, get your last cache version of data, compare the two pages, and then make a phone call for where did this data go, right? And what it turned out happened at that time, so not a conspiracy, and only a very small news story at the time probably, which is that the testing and positive case data moved over to being reported by the state, so at the state level, which is what we're very used to at this point in the pandemic. But at that time, it was a big shift for, again, my information disappeared, I need it, where did it go? I'm going to use cache to compare these two pages, and then I'm going to make a phone call to figure it out. So I like that one to sort of bring that to life. Okay, this is when this starts to get really cool. So we're going to look at in just a moment how we can combine all of these things. This is searching for a file type. So here we have a CSV file that we're searching for. You can search for PDFs, XLS, XLSX, whatever it is that you're looking for. And again, thinking of like getting underneath that first layer of web results, this is sort of how you can find what are all of the PDFs on the FDA website, right? Or what are the data sets on a certain type of website. So the two screenshots we have here, if you Google the word expense, you're going to get the definition of expenses. We don't need that, we know what they are. But if I search for expenses that are CSV files, now I'm getting some interesting results. So if you're looking for raw data and data sets, this is a really interesting way to go about it. We have a few questions. I'm just going to pause here. So Brian says, can you select which cached version of a web page you want? The short answer is no. I did have, and I think you're referencing Internet Archive up on that screen. So I like to show that as a resource. It's not a Google site, but it's just a wonderful resource to go back further in time or to pick the specific time point that you want. So just encouraging you to use that one as a resource, but also knowing that the cache : site search is only going to take you back one step. Let's see. Sue says, how does Google differ from other search engines? If I can't find what I'm looking through Google, will I find different results on different search engines? You might. So I do a training that we do on verification. So how can I verify? What are all the tools to verify the information that I'm finding, the video, the photo, whatever it is. And so a few that we will share that'll return often different types of results. Sometimes they'll take you to pages that are no longer up. But TinEye is one, Yandex is another, Bing is another. We share all of those have a reverse image search, which Google of course does as well. And so if you haven't used that, that's where you can either grab a photo URL or you can upload one into the image search, essentially say, where else does this photo appear online? So you will get different results on different search engines. Okay, thank you for the questions. Please keep them coming. Yes, PPT files, that's a great call out. Thank you, JP. So thinking about this, the military does do a lot of PowerPoints. Check those out, right? See what you can find. And so let me bring that to the next page, which is where you can combine any and all of these search modifiers. And I hope the wheels are turning here a little bit, the way that this one is set up for. On the CIA website, what are the PDFs that have the word secret in the title? So pretty cool search, right? And again, you could do this any way you wish, any organization or website that you're covering, starting to look for what kind of files they have uploaded. And that search, so we've refined it so much that at one time running this site, this search would get you just 3 results. But if I'm a reporter, I want to look at all of these. I'm very curious about what's inside these, right? Maybe they're news stories and maybe they're not, but at least I have found something interesting. And so the first time I saw this, I was actually being trained on it at Gannett by my predecessor in this role. And she shared this and I was like, oh my gosh, I just basically want to write a script to run this search every Sunday night at like 9 p.m. or midnight or something like that. And she's like, cool, if you know how to write a script, go for it. But you could also build that search into a Google alert. So just to sort of bring all of this to life, Google alerts are not new. Probably many of you have them set up. Many people have them for their bylines, for people, their companies, things that you report on regularly as part of your beat. But you can, once you have a search refined that you want to run or you want to just always know the results for, because someday it's going to return something newsy, this is a great place to do that. So you can bring any of those search modifiers into your Google Alert build. So I hope that makes sense. So thinking about this is a super actionable, something you could set up and start using today. If you have Google Alerts that are no longer serving you, maybe you just have started to ignore the emails as they come in, and that happens with all kinds of things that we sort of set up, and sometimes they're useful and many times they're not. I would encourage you to go back in, take a look at them, see if you can refine them, delete ones that you're not using, maybe create a few new ones. So keeping that one in mind as a good tool to have in your pocket. And if you forget all of that, that's totally okay, because you can always go to the advanced search page. You'll find that under settings on the Google homepage. And so that page is going to prompt you for everything I just showed you. So you can say, I want this word, but not that word. I want to limit my results to English. I want to limit my results to the United States. Whatever it is, you can, this page will prompt you for all of those questions. You don't have to fill out all the fields, of course, but you can. So just know that that's always a resource. You don't have to keep these things in your mind. Okay, before I dive into specialized search engines, I'll just pause if there are any other questions about any of those things. Pause for coffee. Encourage you all to do the same. So what I'm going to go over here are 5 specialized search engines. I'm going to live demo some, but not all of them, because we have a lot of interesting things to show today. But the first one that I'll dive into is called Google Scholar. It does 2 things and 2 things only. So what I'm going to do is just come over and visit it. And so it searches through 2 sets of material. I'm going to first click into case law. I'm clicking into California, which is just going to take us over to the page of courts. So from here, I can select all of these courts if I wish, all of the state level courts and all of the federal courts. I don't have to. If I want to just look at Alabama, or even just Alabama's Court of Appeals, for example, I can do that. And once I've selected what I'm looking for, I'll just call out here US Supreme Court, all of the circuit courts, all of the circuits, all of the courts of appeals, etc. It's all here. It's a way of Googling through case law. So if I'm searching for, let's just go to Alabama, I click done. Now I can actually put in my search term. So if I'm looking for case law on a certain topic, or maybe I'm looking for a person that was part of a legal case, this is where I can do this. And this can be a more user-friendly way of searching through some of those cases. And so again, here you can continue to sort of refine what you have. So I'm not going to run those searches, because what I want to do is come back to the home page here. And if I click on articles, not a great word for our purposes, because I think of articles as news stories, but in this case, it means academic articles, right? Research papers, that sort of thing. And I can search on any topic, and I'll show you why you might want to do this. I'm just going to search on vaccine hesitancy. You can see I've already run that one. And so if that's a story that I'm writing, let's say I want to research and write about the history of vaccine hesitancy in the United States pre-COVID, because there is a long and storied history, and plenty of news organizations have done this story. If I come in here, what I can start to do is I'll click on this first article. Here I'm getting some sources right away. So when you're researching and starting to report on a new topic or a very nuanced topic, this is a great place to come get some background information and look for some folks to talk to. So here at the top of this abstract, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people I could call if I want to. Many of these do have, and I'm sure you all have seen that little envelope that indicates this is the lead author, they're the person to reach out to. I see no reason you couldn't look up and reach out to any of these other folks as well. So they are experts on these often very nuanced topics. And I know that when writing stories in the past, I've certainly struggled for who can I call about this? I want to write this story. This is a cool angle, good question. Who am I going to talk to, right? So I'm Googling, of course, and this is just another way of coming at that. I also really like it for source diversity, and I say that meaning 2 things. One, source diversity to call folks beyond those we often do, right? Everybody's got people that are on speed dial that we know they're going to get back to us on deadline and they're going to give us a great quote. And I understand that. But when we have a little bit more time, who else could we talk to, right? Let's just go beyond the usuals. And then, of course, source diversity, meaning let's talk to more women, more people of color, more LGBTQ folks. Let's get more voices and more different types of voices into our stories, who are often going to have a different perspective than we may be used to writing about. So I love this for sourcing in that regard. I'll also call out here just on the results page, you can, of course, do any refinements. So if I remove out COVID here, I would be looking for vaccine hesitancy pre-COVID, right? I don't want anything new about that, perhaps. And then I can also limit my search by time. I can say I only want new stuff. I only want things from 2010 to 2015, for example. I might want to exclude citations. And then just to call this one out, I can create an alert. So once I have this set up the way I like it, and I think it's going to give me some results today or someday in the future, I can make that Google Scholar Google alert right here from this page. So I hope that all makes sense. So this, I think, can be a really robust place to get started in the research phase of stories. I often get the question sort of what's included here. So I'll just call that out. You can read about it if you go down to help, but essentially it's important to remember this is not comprehensive. Everything is not here. If it's not online, it's not here. I know that sounds obvious, but it's important when we're talking about like journals, right? And scholarly papers, not all of them are published online. And one of the requirements is that you also need to be able to get to the abstract or some of more information. So if a site has a paywall or a login that you can't sort of get through, it's not going to be linked up. And then additionally, sites need to sort of apply to be included in Google Scholar. So I say all of that because it's just important to know this isn't comprehensive, but it's a wonderful starting point. All right. The next one I want to show you is dataset search. It is exactly how it's titled. So it does search for datasets and datasets only. This is sort of builds on what we just looked at with the CSV file type search. And so this is simply a dataset search engine. There wasn't a place that you could search for only spreadsheets until dataset search. And so this is when you're the type of reporter, like I need to get my hands on the raw data, or I would like the raw data so that I can clean it up, visualize it. Maybe I want to use Flourish to create a visualization. Maybe I want to map it. I want the data for myself. I don't want to take anyone else's word for it. This is a wonderful place to get started. So I'm just going to click on this sort of suggested query here, which is for COVID data. The first result takes us to the Times that we know, of course, to be a very reputable data set. It's going to turn me over to the Times if I want to explore here. And I'm sure we've all done that sometime in the last almost 2 years. And then what this is letting me know is there's CSV files available to download of the Times data set right over here at GitHub. So I'm going to click through that and just sort of show what's here. And I can see that the live file and the rolling averages file from the Times are updated really frequently. So again, I can get my hands on this data through dataset search. So it's taking me to where that is housed. And I'll just scroll down a little bit because you'll also find the Johns Hopkins set, which is the source for many news organizations, data sets from Data World, from CDC, and other places. So again, a great place to start to look for that raw data. And each of these sort of search abstracts is going to tell you what's at the next page, what's there that I can get my hands on. And then you can also refine this search as well. You know, again, I only want things from the last year. I only want things that are in this type of download format, that kind of thing. So that is a great resource for some of that raw data. All right, the next one is the precursor to what I just showed you. It's called public data. I'm going to head over to it. I'm going to close out these other tabs. And so this is a site it's different from dataset search because you're not just searching like the entire web, you're searching through data sets that are already being pulled into here. There are 137 data providers here. So you could search. What I usually will do is just start here and go to explore the data. And that's how I think about using this, is it's a way of starting to get your arms around a concept. You can certainly use it for reporting, and you can build graphs that you can include in your stories. So anywhere we have embed code, I try to make sure I call that out for you all. This is a graphic that shows something that we know anecdotally to be true, which is life expectancy and fertility rates. Essentially, people are living longer and they're having fewer children, but that's not true everywhere. So if I'm writing this global story, I can start to see where it is not true and then start to think about why that might be. And if this is, again, a story that I am reporting on and I like this chart and I want to include it for my readers, I can click on this little chain link and grab some embed code. Here's the HTML, and I can bring that over to my CMS and include this as an embedded graphic in my story. And you can also come to these pages and start to limit the data or just create something that's different from what you get as a standard set. I'm going to go back to the home page here, if it will do that. Great. And then I'm going to click on Census just to start to take a look at some of this. So this is how you also might explore through here in public data. I'm going to click on US population, census data. This was updated in 2020. Always good to just take a look at how fresh it might be. And I can look at some of, again, same kind of story, the birth rate in the US. Down here, I have the full United States selected. So the data starting in 2011 shows an increase in births and then a pretty steep drop off. And because I live in California, I'm just going to click on that and see how they match. Because the United States curve is so striking, I don't get California's curve visualized, but once I take out the US, then I can compare states, for example. How's the birth rate in California and Alaska change? And this is where we start to sort of get at, where's my story, right? Every data point is a story. These are all people behind this. What are the reasons that the birth rate is dropping? What are the changes that families are making or women are making? And then how are those changes different? So again, starting to just wrap your arms around a concept. This is a great place to do it from a data perspective. And then if this is the story that you're writing, you can include it. And also just start to get curious, right? What does this mean? What's the story here? So I love that site for a little bit of backgrounding. This is a similar one. This is the Common Knowledge Project, commonknowledge.appspot.com. All of the data inside here is from the Census 5-year study. So most of the data goes through 2018. I have yet to find a graphic in there that goes farther than that. So just keep that in mind as you use it. I'm not going to live demo this one, but I just want to call it out as a resource. And it was built by the Data Commons team. And so there are a number of types of data in here. And what you can do is build graphics on certain topics about certain places. So like, what is the racial breakdown in the population of California, for example? If that's the story that I'm writing, again, I can grab some embed code from it and include it in my story. And then the last one I want to share with you all is Fact Check Explorer. This is our newest. It's just a handful of years old, so it's at Fact Check Tools. And what this is doing is that you can search through stories that are marked up specifically as fact checks. And again, because these are specialized search engines, that's all you're searching through. And so what does that mean, fact checks, right? So if you're part of a news organization that's creating them, whether you do one a year or you have a team doing them, if you mark them up, and I'll just highlight here over markup tool on the left, if you mark them up specifically as fact checks, any news site whose work is already being included in Google News, which is surely anyone that you all work with, so they have to have already met that criteria. And if they're coded up as a fact check, those fact checks will show up here. So think of this as like Snopes on steroids, Snopes' current situation sort of notwithstanding. But this is a place to come get started for where's the real information about a certain topic, right? So you can do it for like a locality. You can search for your state, for example, and I'll just do that really quickly. Or you could search on a topic. So here are just some recent fact checks about California. This one from PolitiFact about trucking regulations. So those laws are just starting to change here. I see a USA Today fact check, my former news organization. So I can just start to see what are the rumors and what's true about the place that I live, or on any topic. Of course, you can imagine what's under COVID, plenty of fact checks. And so it's also, I think, just important to start to get a sense of what's being shared out there, right? And again, which parts of it are right and which are not. And as I think about the 20 years that I've been in journalism, when I started, if something wasn't happening, it wasn't a story. That was the thinking in newsrooms. So if it's like, oh, a bus crashed into a building downtown, let me run down there, let me get on the phone. Did that really happen? No, it didn't happen. Sorry, bad tip, right? Okay, not a story. But if a lot of people, now the thinking has changed, think that something is true, we might want to do a story. And if that thing is not true, then we might want to do a story simply correcting the record, right? We want to do clarifications. We want to do fact checks. We feel a responsibility or maybe just a desire to write about, no, this viral photo isn't real, and here's why we all got duped by it, right? Or misconceptions about the vaccines. So really feeling some of the responsibility to do things like fact checks. Again, when there is just like a lot of people think that something is true. So I just share that as a little bit of an observation from my career. So fact check tools is the place that you can get started looking for those things. And again, if you're creating fact checks, they can also be included in here. The other option here is to just sort, it's the only two language options are English and all languages, but just know that that's possible. And if I go back here, then I can also just click on recent fact checks and just see what's new. Plenty of fact checks to do around Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation and what they're funding. And good for us to all have a sense of that. JP says there's a lot more Google things than I thought. I agree, JP. I didn't know about most of these things before I started this role. So it's interesting. We think of Google as the big search engine, which of course it is, but there are also all of these other ways to search for things through these specialized processes. All right, which brings us to the end of the advanced search piece of today. Again, happy to take your questions as we go, but I'm going to keep moving because I want to move on to Pinpoint and show you that tool. So stepping forward into Pinpoint. So reference this one already. So what Pinpoint does is it analyzes and breaks out entities through large sets of documents or small sets of documents. So if the classic use case would be you've put out a FOIA request, you've now gotten back your documents, maybe it's been a few months, but you've got a bunch of great stuff. You just don't know what the stories are inside there. Uploading them into a collection, Pinpoint is going to break out, these are the most mentioned people, these are the most mentioned locations and organizations. I'll show you what all of this means. And then the other way that people often find their way into it is if you upload an audio file, you're going to get back a transcription. So it's a free audio transcription tool. Many reporters pay for things like Otter or Trent. And if you don't already, but you're also spending a lot of time transcribing, give it a shot. I like to think of it as like, let the tool do the heavy lifting so that you can expend your limited time and energy on the things that only you can do. Writing, creating, interviewing, searching for stories, searching for wonderful angles. So let the tool sort of do some of those other tasks for you. Pinpoint is part of Google's Journalist Studio. So just to call out, we see some trusted sites here. Google Trends, I'm sure you all use. We just looked at Fact Check Explorer and the Common Knowledge Project. I mentioned Flourish, which is a data visualization site. It's not actually a Google tool, but it's one that we help provide access free for journalists for. And then Pinpoint, of course. So it's part of a set of tools that were either created specifically for journalists or that have specific journalistic use cases. So as mentioned, you can search through the documents that you might upload. So Pinpoint will break out your entities and you can search through them. And there's some really powerful search functions that I'll show you in our live demo in just a moment. And so it's helping start to sort through, I've got a bunch of data. What is it that I'm trying to find here? What's my story? And I want to pause there because a natural question is when you think about, I've got these documents that I've worked really hard to get my hands on, or maybe that I've even created myself, and I'm uploading them into Pinpoint. What does that mean? Know that your collections are private just to you unless you choose to share them with someone else, but you can never actually make something public through Pinpoint. So it will never show up in search results. It's not being indexed for search. And if you want to include a document in your story, like I've got this, here's a PDF that I'm writing about, right? Something that was just released. You'll need to use a different tool to do that, like a Scribd or a document cloud. Pinpoint is not the place to upload something publicly and then use it to embed it in your story. It is a way for you to get your arms around some of the documents that you might have. These are the file types that are supported. And I like to pause here just to call out that audio one again. So audio files, MP3, WAV, there are 5 or 6 file types that are supported. If you've got an interview that you did, and maybe it's about an hour, you can upload that file into Pinpoint. You're going to get the transcription back as a PDF. Again, I'll show you what that looks like. And then I've also just said documents a lot as I talk about this. And of course, I tend to think of Word documents, PDFs, etc. As mentioned, PowerPoints, big in the military. So you may be finding these for the organizations that you might be reporting on. You can also search for text on an image. I'll bring that to life. And increasingly, if you've requested a set of emails, maybe between the mayor and a city council person, right? Something that's part of the public record. And when you get those returned to you as email file types, you can upload them into Pinpoint and they'll be supported. This is what the entity breakdown looks like. Again, this will come to life more when we look at it together on a demo. But what this means is the people, organizations, and locations that are mentioned in any of your documents are all going to show up here. So it's part of what helps you start to understand what you've got your hands on. And then also, as mentioned, you can share your collection with others. This is basically, think of it as like view-only access. So similar to a Google Doc, if I share something with you as a viewer, you can look at it, but you can't change it. And that's this type of sharing as well. So if I want to share my set of documents with a reporter that we're going to be co-bylining a story on, or my editor so they can see my source material, they can look at it, but they can't change it. And if you think about a set of documents that maybe a lot of people within your organization need to see, that's when that starts to make a lot of sense. So you're the owner of it and you're the only person who can add new documents to it or remove documents. So you wouldn't want, for example, somebody accidentally deleting half of the documents that you need. So again, just think of this as view-only access. Let me move over to Pinpoint itself and show you a little bit more about how it works. So it's at g.co/Pinpoint. You can request access. It's just for journalists. It's for academic researchers. It's not a public-facing tool. So you will need to fill out just a short form sort of explaining I'm a journalist, whether you're freelance or you work for an organization, that's fine. The team that works on Pinpoint is based in Tel Aviv. They have an internal goal of getting back to every journalist request within 24 hours. They often do it much faster than that. Sometimes I'll demo something at the beginning of an hour, and by the end, people who've requested access have it. Also, if you use Workspace, so I think of this as like Gmail for work. If you use Workspace for your work mail, you may be able to simply already have access. If you go to g.co/Pinpoint, you're already looking at this and you're already clicking in and you have access. So I'm going to tour you around a little bit now that I'm inside Pinpoint. The first thing to share with you is the language settings. So there are 2 types of language settings. The first is entity display language. This essentially means what language are my documents in? And so it understands sort of what to read them in. So you can make your choices here. And then audio file, spoken language. What language are my audio files in? Did I conduct my interview in Spanish? If so, I'm going to move over here to Spanish. So you can make those two changes and they don't have to be the same. And then I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom before we get into my workspace area. And then once you're first in Pinpoint, everybody has access to this. So these are public collections. As mentioned, I think it's hard to overemphasize this, but if I'm hitting it over the head, I apologize. But these are done through a special separate process through partnership with these organizations. Anything you upload to Pinpoint is not made public. So it can't accidentally be done. It can't purposefully be done. These are done through a separate process, but these are all public record as well. So you'll start to recognize the Afghanistan papers. We have the court filings and the Mueller investigation, as well as the Mueller report itself, which is down here, I believe. And then some interesting historical documents, the FBI files on Reagan, the FBI files on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So just some collections that you can start to look through. JFK assassination records, troves of stories inside there. And this gives you this, you can find stories in here right away, starting today, or it just gives you a sense of what's possible, right? So if I click into, I'm going to click into the Mueller report here. This is what this looks like live. 448 PDF documents as part of this collection. And these are the most mentioned people. Not surprisingly, Donald Trump is at the top of the list. And if I click into here to show more, any name that's mentioned anywhere in the Mueller report is going to show up in this list, including if they're only mentioned one time. So you can see a lot of these, again, are mentioned one time. If I click on any name, it's going to bring the documents where they are, where their name is mentioned. The organizations, DOJ, FBI, et cetera, WikiLeaks, and then locations here. So you can click on any of these and start to narrow your documents to show me all of the ones where DOJ is mentioned, for example. So that's a little bit of what that looks like. And now I'm going to go into this set of documents. There are NASA documents from the Apollo missions. So a lot of cool stuff in here. Again, we're looking at 1,300 documents. We've got most mentioned people, astronauts, presidents. We have most mentioned organizations, NASA, Capcom, DOD, all kinds of stuff here. And then the locations, United States, Houston, Earth. You get the idea. I'm going to click on NASA because I want to bring something to life here. So what this means, this often, when we're searching on Google, we're trying to think a little bit of like, what are the results I'm looking for, right? And we're jumping ahead. And so here, when I click on NASA, I'm getting any document that mentions NASA as NASA, of course, but I'm also going to get any document that mentions the fully spelled out name of the agency. So that's called synonym search. And I'm going to do another one here. So in a set of Apollo mission documents, you're going to expect to see references to the moon. And if I search for moon, sure enough, 350 of them reference the moon. But over here, if you can see this little green highlight, is also pulling out the word lunar. So this is, I think I should think of this as like Pinpoint essentially saying, if you're looking for this, you might also want to see this, right? So trying to be sort of inclusive of what's all the information I have. If I'm searching for X, I might also want Y. Check out this document, it mentions lunar. And if I'm not interested in that, nope, I only really want the word moon, I can go back to my search refinements and say, no, please don't return the synonym search to me. I'm just looking for the word moon. So that's a little bit of a different type of search that you can do within Pinpoint. And then another thing that you can do is search through handwriting. I have yet to see another tool that can do this. So as I search here, I'm bringing up this file. So this is it was a JPEG, it's now a PDF. Everything gets converted to PDFs. So I've searched for Loomis and state. Here I see it's pulling out the word Loomis as typewritten, former acting director of NASA. And it's also highlighting the word state down here. So it's written in cursive, it's written diagonally, and yet it is searching through handwriting for this word. So if you think about document sets, handwritten things like bills marked up in the margins, handwritten notes from somebody to somebody else, archival material, maybe your own notes, I think the possibilities are kind of endless. Again, I have yet to see another tool that can do this, although if you have, you should tell me so I can stop saying that. But I think that can be really powerful, especially when you start to think about the use cases. Another type of search that, again, I have yet to see anywhere else is text on photo. So if I search for giraffe, it is not going to pull up all of the photos of giraffes, which there aren't any in here, But what it is going to do is it's going to find any photo that has a word on it. So here I've searched for STDN, the Spacecraft Tracking and Data Acquisition Network within NASA. And here it's found this photo of a person I assume is at Mission Control and works as part of the STDN. So thinking of, if I'm doing a story on this division within NASA, Pinpoint is saying you probably want to see this photo. There might be something in here that's useful for you. I've also thought about like astronaut names, or even anybody in the military, right? You got your name on your uniform, flight suits, whatever that might be. If you've got photos of those people with their names, Pinpoint should be able to find that text if it's readable within the photo. So starting to just pull together whole sets of information. I see there looks like there's a question in the chat. So let me scroll back up. Apologize. Can material uploaded to Pinpoint be subpoenaed? So Brian, that is an answer that what I'm going to do is direct you to the FAQ for Pinpoint. I believe I have it in your cheat sheet. If I don't, I will add it as soon as I'm done presenting. And if you have further questions on that, I can put you in touch with the Pinpoint team. One thing that they use to describe as a corollary to the level of security within Pinpoint is it's the same as using tools that we're already used to using for work and for reporting, like Gmail, like Google Docs, right? So it adheres to the same set of criteria. So again, if I haven't given you the FAQ, I will do that, and it goes into a little bit more detail there. All right, a couple of other searches just to show you the power of what's in there. And so the last one would be searching through audio. And so what this is I have pulled up this audio file that was uploaded into Pinpoint as an MP3, again, returned to me back as a PDF once it got transcribed. And so here I've found the piece within the audio that I was looking for. So if you are the one who did the interview, you remember, I remember they mentioned so-and-so, I remember they used this turn of phrase, or let me get to the point where we talked about this specific issue, which is the one I'm actually writing about. This is what that's doing. So this has taken me to this point in the audio where that is referenced. And so people often ask, how good is the audio transcription? You kind of get a sense of that here. In English, it's very good. It's less good in other languages, but it's getting better. And the way that I think of it is that it gets you about 85% of the way there. So it's not perfect, but it's very, very good. And it's a huge head start for not having to transcribe your own audio. The copy editor in me really wants to sort of clean this up, and those of you that are reading through it probably want to do the same. And the way that I would use this is, again, it's pulling out the timestamp of where in the audio file this is found. And I'm prompted to listen to it. So what I might do, if this is the quote I want in my story, I'm copying it, I'm pasting it over into a Google Doc or in my CMS. I'm cleaning up this quote by listening to it, making sure it matches exactly with what was said, and then I'm including it in my story and I'm moving along. So you can really start to save some time here. And I love that it takes you to that point in the audio so that you can re-listen to it and make sure it's exactly accurate. So that's a little bit of what that audio transcription looks like. All right, those are the searches I wanted to show you. I'm gonna walk through a couple of use cases. I see we have about 12 minutes left, so I'm not gonna probably hit them all, but how news organizations have used Pinpoint to help do some of their storytelling. So here, an example from Reveal for the Center for Investigative Reporting. They use Pinpoint to search through thousands of pages of emails and records from health agencies around the country, part of an ongoing story about the spread of COVID in immigration detention centers. And this story in particular is about testing. So you can imagine if you have your document set that you're searching for tests, testing, again, synonym search is probably going to bring all those together, that you're starting to hone in on, this is the angle that I'm writing about. I only want to look at documents that mention testing so that I can get my arms around this story. Here, the Globe had FOIA requested a number of documents about the police department, and when they were returned to them, if you've ever gotten them back from the government like this, you'll know they're photocopied badly, they're upside down, they've got stuff on them that feels illegible. They were able to use Pinpoint to search through some of those documents to get at those words or phrases that they're looking for that might be difficult to do without that handwriting search, without it being able to find the words on photos, things like that. And so what I really like about this one is that when they got those documents back, often if you're just like, great, I've got my stuff, let me just sit at my desk and read through every page. They were able to actually write a story on deadline because they could search through their documents very quickly and hone in on what it is that they wanted to write about. So you can really up the speed of story turnover. And then I'll call out that the Post has been using Pinpoint for quite a while. So they've used it in all of these stories here. They use it to help analyze the Mueller report. And what they're doing now is they have a trove of documents related to the January 6th Capitol riots. And any reporter that's working on stories related to that could access that set of documents. And when I think about the Post, I think about, for them, that story, it's a national story, it's a local story, it's a political story. You can imagine the different teams and the different reporters that might need to access that document set. And as mentioned, when you are the owner of that document set, the collection, you might not want other people changing it. You might not want them adding to it. You definitely don't want them deleting things from it. So even though that could be shared far and wide, nobody is able to actually change it but you. So I think that's important to call out. And then the Sun, a former newsroom of mine, they used that FBI files collection on Martin Luther King Jr. to write a story tied to MLK Day. So you can see the date is January here. And they simply searched for the word Baltimore. What's in this historical collection of documents about the city where I live? Here's a really interesting story that we haven't told. So another way of sort of using that. All right, I'll call out this one and then I'm going to switch gears to our final topic. And so this is from USA Today, again, another former newsroom of mine. And this is sort of what I would call a classic USA Today story. So we're looking at what is the state of X in 50 states. So documents are being requested in all 50 states. You don't always get them all back, but you're starting to give shape to a story. So they use Pinpoint to both figure out what's the story we're trying to tell. And also, turns out we don't need all of these other documents that we got back. So they use Pinpoint to help make sense of, we're going to use these and we're actually going to set these other ones aside out of the thousands of documents that have been returned to us. So I think that's interesting too. Again, you can sign up at g.co/pinpoint. And with 8 minutes to go, I'm going to shift gears to time lapse. So this one's pretty cool. Let me tell you a little bit about it and then I will show it to you. So time lapse is Google Earth's newest feature. And so what it does is it kind of brings a fourth dimension to the globe, a dimension of time. It uses satellite imagery starting in 1984. So you can search for anywhere on the globe and essentially watch how that place has changed. So it's really striking when it comes to things like climate change. Here you can see the drying of the Aral Sea, and then I believe they're starting to reflood that again. So really interesting to watch that change. There's one photo from every year where you start to build a time lapse of something. So these show just, again, different places around the globe. We see glaciers melting, deforestation. This is Dubai sort of being built, coming to life. Lots of growth around Vegas. So really interesting things that you can go see. And before we go visit it, I want to call out this site. So there is g.co/time-lapse videos. I'll just go to it and actually show it to you. So the Google Earth team has already made 800 plus videos of interesting time lapses from around the globe. Let me actually go there. And so you can use these videos right away. You find the one that you're looking for, you can search, you can sort by region, and you can then download a high-res video of that time lapse. So you aren't able to actually create your own time lapse videos, but some of the more interesting ones from anywhere around the globe are here already for you. All right, I want to go to time lapse and show you what that looks like. So g.co/time lapse. Oh, I see JP has another idea. Growth around military bases. Yeah, that's really interesting. Or even as bases close, right? In BRAC, sort of what changed in the cities around them. All right, okay, this is loading. It's Google Earth, as you probably know, is a heavy program. But what's happening here is we are moving through time. So again, one photo from every year. The early photos come from USGS, Time, NASA, and then other ones sort of from Google Earth imagery directly, but done through partnership. And I could click on any of these stories. So I'm going to click on this one called Warming Planet. And it's going to take us here. We've got 10 places around the globe that this story is taking us first to the Columbia Glacier in Alaska. And it's going to take just a minute to render here in higher res. And we can really start to see what has changed from 1984 on. Pretty striking, pretty devastating. I can zoom out, I can zoom in. If there's street view, I can drop into street view. So you can do all the things that you would do here on regular Google Earth. You can't get as close as you might do in Google Earth because the time-lapse photos, especially the older ones, are just not high res enough to get us like zoomed right in on top of, let's say, a city block, but it's meant to give you the sense of change. So here's what I want to ask for you all. This is the last thing we'll do together. I'm going to go back to just time-lapse. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. Don't do it yet. And then we're going to do it together. So I'm going to ask you to go to time-lapse, go look at something. You can click on a story and see one of the sort of featured locations, or you can search. So you can type into the search bar any location, maybe where you live or something you're interested in seeing. And then what I have for you is a Jamboard, which is a collaborative brainstorming tool. I'm just going to grab the link to that. I'm going to put it in the chat. So what I would ask is if you, again, visit somewhere on time-lapse and then come over to Jamboard, let me go to it and show you what it looks like, and leave a sticky note of where you visited. So I'll show you how to make a sticky note. Click on this little guy. And where did you visit in time-lapse? Did you notice? So that's what I would love to see from y'all. I'm going to save that, drop it in the middle here, make it bigger. As you add sticky notes, they're going to all show up in the upper left. So we'll just start to move them around. So again, would love it if you would go to time-lapse, go somewhere and tell us what you saw and what you learned. So you can go to the time-lapse link in the chat, g.co/time-lapse, and then I'll call this slide up. So I hope that's clear enough. Go check it out and let us know where you visited, and let's see what's interesting around the globe. So I'll give us just another minute or two to drop some sticky notes of interesting things you're looking for, and then we'll read them out. Feel free to ignore me, but I also see there were some Q&A questions, which I've just opened up. So apologies that I moved forward as they were going. So Phil says, where do we start when uploading audio for transcription? Is it create new private collection? Yes. So you're going to need to create a collection. This is a Pinpoint question. Open it up, and then you'll be able to upload your files right from there. Gloria also asked about when I remove the word lunar from the moon search. She says, does it mean that no documents will contain that word or that it won't search for lunar? It's the latter. So you're essentially saying, don't give me results that have this word on them. But that doesn't mean that no documents contain that word within your collection. Hope that's clear. So we've got one sticky note on our Jamboard. Somebody visited Kandahar. Says you can see the rapid building up of Kandahar airfield starting in the 2000s. Thank you for visiting. That's a great idea. I love the idea of looking around bases, looking at what's changed, whether that's US or globally. Anyone else? Sometimes the sticky notes move a little bit slow, so I'm going to refresh the Jamboard. Also go over here and just search for Vegas, so we can see some of that development grow as we're looking at our notepad. It looks like Russell looked at Manhattan, says a lot of development over the years. Yeah, that's right. Ken says went to the Houston Ship Channel, petrochemical plants that emit pollutants. Wow. I have yet to have anybody go there, so thank you for that. So here we can just see, again, over time, we're watching sort of time move through at the top, watching Vegas like really flesh out. And of course, there's an Air Force base there that we know about. All right. Somebody went to Mongolia and says there's not much that's green in Mongolia. One thing I noticed yesterday as I was looking at, I think it was a place in Michigan, depending on when the photo from that year was taken, you're going to get just different seasonality, right? So there were a bunch of farmland around where I was looking. And so sometimes it's brown, sometimes it's green. You can start to see that change. Okay, I'm at time and I know that you all are ready to begin your next session. So I'm not going to go on any further. Thank you everybody for your time today. I know I sent a lot your way. Again, you have a cheat sheet. Please reach out to me with any questions. And thank you for the opportunity. I hope you have a great rest of the conference.
All right. Thank you so much, Mary. That was